Hello, everyone. I don't own the rights to this music. This is Reverend Mike McClure Jr. If you don't have his CD or CD, if you don't have his music downloaded, I suggest you do. I guess I should throw my gum out. Ooh, about to mess everything up. All right, it is 7 p.m., y'all. It's 7. All right, Alexa, turn off. Welcome, guys. Welcome. Happy Monday. Happy Monday. It is 7 p.m. Monday, August 24th, y'all. Do y'all believe it is the 24th of August, 2026 already? Like we're like literally done with this year. Like it's crazy. We're almost 9 months in. And a lot of people are going back to school tomorrow. Some people are going back Wednesday. My baby, she went back today. It's her first year as a junior at University of Hartford. And her first day back as a junior, not first year as a junior, but her first day back as a junior at UHart. She is a poli-sci major. And it's just so many great things are happening. If you guys can, put in the chat what grade your loved one is going into, your child or yourself, like if you're going back to school this semester, this year, put it in the chat. I would love to see what people are doing and, maybe give some back, some feedback or, just some things that I can give you guys to help you have a better year. All right. So it's your girl, Dr. Tasha Rose. I am here this evening with you guys. We are going to be talking about back to school, but not back to burnout, right? A mental health check-in for every age. And as I was coming in today, because I did not prepare over the weekend, I said, God, what am I going to speak today about? And God reminded me that it's school time and all these school buses were like around. And I was like, you know what? Let's talk about that. So welcome back to another episode of Healing Unlocked CT, where we have honest conversations about faith, healing, relationships, trauma, and becoming healthier in every area of our lives. So tonight we're going to talk about going back to school, but not just school supplies, schedules, uniforms, homework, or drop-off lines, right? We are talking about the mental health check-in that every person needs, every person, including myself, right? Children are carrying things, parents are carrying things, teachers are carrying things, administrators are carrying things, adult students are also carrying things, our community leaders are carrying things. And sometimes what that looks like, it can be different, right? So sometimes what looks like disrespect, anger, laziness, withdrawal, or attitude may actually just be exhaustion, anxiety, fear, grief, overstimulation, or a person who does not yet know how to put what they're feeling into words. So faith aware reminds us that compassion does not mean ignoring harmful behavior, right? We can have compassion for someone, but it does not mean that we're going to ignore the negative behavior, right? So it says grace does not mean removing accountability. You can have grace for someone or you can give someone grace, but you don't remove the accountability of it, right? Can you tell the truth? We can tell the truth. We can hold boundaries for others, and we can still treat people like human beings while creating dignity. That is what we're going to really talk about this evening. And I'm super excited to have you guys here. Please, like I said, check in Tell me if you are someone that's going back to school, if your child is going back to school, if you're a teacher, administrator, check in, check in, check in. Let me know. Let me know. And, it's so important to have these conversations, I think, because we carry so much as just human beings, right? We carry so much as just on our everyday lives, we just carry things. And so I was like, this is going to be amazing. And so I'm excited to give you guys some stuff today. So, buckle up and let's do this, right? So, a mental health check in for every age. Why is it every age? Because one of the things that we have really, really invested in is saying it's time for the kids to go back to school. And we really hone in on the children going back to school. But there is a village of people going back to school, not just the students, not just the little people K through 12, not just the college students. Everyone's going back to school, because when the students go back to school, we have teachers, we have administrators, we have people with their own children going back to school. So everyone goes back to school as a community. So it's not just the kids, y'all. It's not just the kids. It's everyone involved with all the different children, right? So a back to school transition can affect someone's sleep, energy, appetite, patience, concentration, motivation, social confidence, family relationships, physical symptoms, and a person's sense of safety and belonging. We don't really even understand how that transition can really impact us as we go from summer, having fun, traveling, visiting family, or whatever. It could be a family who didn't do much of anything for the summer, right? And now they got to go back to school. They don't have what they need. They feel kind of backed up. There's so many different emotions and feelings that people might be having when they're transitioning back to go to school. Use the change and pattern. So, rule: notice what is different of a person that rather than trying. So basically, I'm messing up on my own words, right? So we got to notice what is different for that person rather than trying to diagnose them or trying to, make our own a conclusion of what's happening with them. We need to pay attention to patterns of change, right? So when children come back into school, or when we're all getting back into school, we have to remind ourselves that this is a transition. And just like any transition, there's going to be some bumps in the road. It's just like at the end of the school year, we usually have more issues during the end of the school year, right? It's the same thing as the beginning of the school year. We always have to pay attention to the transition and not always the behavior. Ask, is this interfering with school, work, relationships, or daily functioning? So again, if the behavior is interfering with these things, we need to kind of understand, maybe sit down and talk to each other, the students, the colleagues, our friends, our parents, our administrators. We need to sit down and have some conversations. So one of the things that I try to help people understand is, in the beginning of the school year, I know that we have all these things that we have to do, but I would say about the first 2 weeks of school, it's really just reintegrating students, the staff, and everyone into a routine. Come in full force, expecting all these things to happen within this transition period usually is the start of burnout. So we have to be very careful on when we're transitioning into something. I'm not saying make it just fun all the time, but give people that grace to say, you know what, we're still transitioning. The first 14 days of school, it should be really a transitional period where we're assessing, we're seeing the patterns, we're seeing what might need to be changed, or if a parent is having struggles, or the student is struggling, or if the administrator is struggling, or if something's happening within that 14-day period. That really gives us an opportunity to see what we can do, how we can provide support, how we can be good colleagues, how we can be good teachers, stewards, all those things. But we can't just run into starting something in a transition, right? And I even, as I was putting this together, it had me kind of like think about like even with my transition on some of my own personal stuff. And I was like, oh God, you always talking to me. He's always telling me my business as I'm educating. So I'm gonna tell y'all right now, like he just be cracking me up because I'm like, why you gotta be in my business like that, man? But I'm just like in a space where it just tickled me as I was talking about this and as I was writing and preparing. God reminded me of some things that I need to do within my transition period, right? So anyway, what may have changed recently? Does the person appear overwhelmed, unsafe, isolated, or unstable? Or person is that person unable to calm down because of these things? Sometimes we have to take time to get to know who we're dealing with, who we're working with, because even if you're a parent or you're administrator or a social worker or a nurse, we don't know. You don't know what your colleagues are going through, right? We don't know what they might have gone through during the summer. And they might have to come in and have to lock in, but that doesn't mean that they're good. And sometimes we can cause people to feel overwhelmed and we can have these this false interpretation of who they are because they might snap or they might not be as playful or courteous as you feel they should be or that they were from the last time that they were there. But at the end of the day, we don't know what that transition period looks like for them or how it's impacting them. And it's the same thing that we have to do for our students when they come back in. We don't know what they're dealing with. So we have to give them time to transition. And so we all have to be very, very patient with each other. And I think sometimes that can be hard, especially when you're trying to do things, you're trying to get things done, or you're against time, and you got your principal saying one thing, you got your superintendent saying one thing, you got your social work, your nursing, all these people saying that these things need to happen by X, Y, and Z. Of course, you're going to be rushing, but in the rush, we're missing out. And not only do we need to be patient during the transition, we also need to be putting goals in place, right? Putting goals in place so that when things may not go as planned, we still can go back to say, okay, maybe we can move this goal down and then we can bring this up and we can do this now, right? So it's just about pivoting, right? We can pivot. So we are not trying to label people. We are trying to notice people. When you think about, if you say to a student, let's just think about it. As an adult, if you were to say to your significant other, a colleague, a friend, right? I'm not trying to label you. I'm not trying to hurt your feelings. I'm just trying to notice. I'm just trying to understand you. I'm just trying to get a better sense of where you stand. If there's a conflict or if there's a miscommunication, if you tell someone, I just want to see, I'm just trying to see you, I'm just trying to understand where you stand, they're going to look at you and they're going to be better off they're going to be willing to talk to you than you just saying to them, listen, you can't be doing this. This is early in the year. Like, you need to go in there with your students. You need to pick it up. Or, you can't speak to me this way. I know you might be having a bad day, but I'm not. Like, it all depends on how you notice people, how you like speak from the heart without being mean, right? We gotta show compassion during transitioning periods so that we don't get burned out, so that we can give what we need to each other, so that we're learning how to be emotionally intelligent rather than reactive. And I think the more we learn these things, I think people will, our students will have a better year, our teachers will have a better year, the school would be less chaotic. But what happens is people come in from the transitional period already overwhelmed with everything they got to get done within a short period of time, that it not only trickles from the top, it goes all the way down to the students. And now the whole school is in chaos. The whole school is in chaos. Things get overlooked. And then you have behavioral students. You got students who come in and they're very timid. We have students who might be going through things at home. We have all these things happening, but because everything is in a rush and no one has patience, no one's noticing anything or noticing anybody, that is a start to burnout, and that is the start to no one being able to communicate with anyone. Children and teens may show irritability. They may cry. They may avoid school. They may have physical complaints. They may have sleep changes when they're struggling, failing grades, anger, withdrawal, perfectionism, or statements such as, I can do this. Now, this is what it looks like when the students are exhausted, right? So what we talked about, that transition, I'm telling you now, like, what does some of these things look like when proper transition does not happen, and how it leads into exhaustion, right? So that's some of the things that we might see in children. But let's think about the adults when the transition isn't smooth. We have adults may they seem like balance in employment, parenting, finances, relationships, transportation, caregiving, and academic pressure. That stress may look like procrastination, missed assignments, silence, irritability, or shame. Now, these are for your adult students. This is what it might look like if they're exhausted, right? Because they got to work, they got to go to school, they might have children, they have finances. So their exhaustion may start to look like procrastination. Their exhaustion might look like missing assignments, silence, irritability, feeling shameful, not like it, pretty much isolation. If you don't have good transitional period to get yourself acclimated back into things, right? This is how burnout begins. Teachers and administrators may experience dread, right? Emotional numbness, constant frustration, difficulty resting, cynicism, right? Cynicism is, okay, detachment or feeling responsible for everyone. Now, I'm pretty sure there's teachers and administrators who right now that is this way throughout the school year. I'm going to tell y'all right now, if you see those types of people, if they're not exhausted or burnt out at school, there is something in their personal life that they might be experiencing. And this is exactly why we have to give people time to transition back into school. It's because we don't know what's going on outside of school, right? Behavior is communication. We got to remember that. But communication is not permission to harm others. So all the things that I've said earlier about students, adult students, and teachers and administration, even although you might be burned out and you might experience some of these behaviors, it does not mean that you're entitled to have these behaviors and hurt people. It just means you got to check your behavior. You got to acknowledge, hey, I need some time off. Hey, I might need to use EAP. Hey, I might need this. And then when it comes with the children, it's important for the children to be able to identify their emotions. And that's why even in this transitional stage, it might be important for students to connect with the school counselor department, right? School counseling department, and talk to them. Maybe have some, free time to express, like, what does this face look like? How do you feel when you get this way? Like, early on conversations would help children get through the school year easier. You as adult students, when you know what it kind of like, you can explain what's going on. You have to then come up with coping mechanisms so that you can get through the school system or the school day or semester well. And then as teachers and administrators, like, there should be things that teachers and administrators could do on a monthly basis to decompress or de-stress. It should not just be at the end of the school year or on vacation that you get to do this. These things need to happen on a constant basis, because you got to think about it. We're with students, and students are with teachers and administrators for most of their year. They're with you for 6, 7 hours. Sometimes if you're a coach, you're with students for 8 hours, 9 hours, 10 hours, depending on if you're a teacher and a coach. So sometimes we have to understand that the burnout can get real. And then our communication becomes very nasty, and we don't know how to talk to each other, and we don't know how to understand each other, and we cause harm to one another. Look underneath the behavior while still addressing the threats, violence, bullying, and unsafe conduct directly. So when you start seeing things happening, we need to make sure that we're not only looking at those things, we are looking at what's causing those things. And again, all the stuff that I've talked about earlier about how the symptoms look, I need you guys to pay attention. Lock in on those transitional moments, because you'll start to see things really early on in those 14 days. If you really stop and notice the children, notice your colleagues, and notice how people are moving, I'm going to tell you right now, it's going to give you an opportunity to stop some of the behaviors, or at least get a little bit of stability with it. There is an acronym that I use to help people understand how to control their emotions, right? And how to control like a negative or aggressive behavior. So the first one is S. It's called, so the acronym is SAFE, right? So it's for stop, assess, find, and establish. So we're going to stop and regulate yourself. So that means as a teacher, as a student, we're going to teach you guys how to lower your voice, slow your breathing, and do not match the other person's intensity. Now, when we're dealing with students, it's hard to really show this, but that's why in the beginning of the school year, we start working on these things early on. The reason why is because when you give someone like coping mechanisms before things get out of hand, right? It's easier to go to it, and you practice it over and over again. I like to do things that are proactive other than reactive. And what I'm realizing with a lot of systems and a lot of schooling, that a lot of time the system is very reactive to things and not proactive to things. However, I could be wrong. But as a therapist, I have realized that for the most part, people come to me under the reactive space instead of proactive. So when I get people that come to me and they want to deal with some of, they want to kind of like learn coping skills so that when these things come up, they know how to behave, or they want to work with some of that that deep rooted stuff. I'm so happy to hear these people or to see these people, because that shows me that they're being proactive and not reactive. So it's the same thing. When we start teaching early on, not just the students, but everyone in the building, the acronym SAFE, it's easier for them to use it when there's something coming up. And if you practice, the more you practice, it becomes normal. It becomes something that you can do without thinking. So the second letter is A, assess. So assess safety. Identify immediate danger, threats, physical aggression, weapons, medical emergencies, and when additional support is needed. That is what we need to be teaching each other. Assess what's around us, because when we assess those things as well, we know how to move, we know how to behave, we know how to communicate better. The next letter is F. Find the feelings without excusing the behavior. Right? So saying something like, I can see that you are very upset, or you can be angry, but you cannot threaten to hurt people. These are things that we can say to each other. As adults, we can say, hey, would you like to talk about this? Like, can we schedule some time to go through, what happened? I just want you to know that I understand that I might have hurt your feelings, or I might have stepped on your toes, but I just want to make sure that we're good. Being able to find the feeling without excusing the behavior, which is express what it is without reacting, and now you want to fix it. E, establish the next step. Offer one clear direction, such as moving to a quieter space, taking a short reset, involving a counselor or caregiver, or revisiting the issue when someone is when someone is safer and calmer. A lot of time, I'm just going to say this for students and teachers, right? A lot of time when we have a student that is reactive or a student that is unregulated or dysregulated, sometimes we try to calm them down in the midst of their dysregulation. Sometimes children don't need that because it's agitation. And I think about it like this. When I was giving birth, right, I was already in pain. I was agitated. And I just remember, I think my husband at the time was like rubbing my leg. And that was so annoying to me. It's like, why are you touching me, right? And it's the same thing when someone is already agitated. You tell them to calm down. You say, oh, hold on. People don't need to always hear that. What you can say to them is, hey, when you find a time to talk to me, come and talk to me. Or, I'm here for you. Make it very like open without judgment. But you need to calm down, you need to stop, you need to go out of the classroom. You can say, hey, would you like to go out of the classroom until you can reset? Right? Because instead of calling the guard or security all the time, is there a need for it? Someone crying, someone just being mean verbally doesn't always need a guard. You can ignore them, right? You can continue to do what you're doing unless someone becomes aggressive, and then you call the guard. But just because the child is yelling and being disrespectful, sometimes we don't need to threaten them with something more, because that's only going to agitate them more. Sometimes we have to learn how to do that classroom management on being able to ignore. Hey, Josh, I can, do you want to step out and talk to me? Emily, do we need to step out and talk, or what's going on? I'm here to help you, but I can't help you with you screaming. When we bring our voice down and we let them know that we hear them and we want to help them, it helps to reduce some of that agitation. But if we're going at them with agitation and irritation and making them feel, it's only going to heighten it. So that's why it's so important to establish that next step. But the biggest part is the assessment. Because if this child or this person is not doing anything that's causing harm to you or someone else, why are we escalating? That also causes burnout for the administrator, the teacher, and then it just causes a lot of unsafety for the student, because now they're like, they don't care about my feelings. And we're like, well, you shouldn't be acting like that. And it's like, well, how else do I act? I don't know no other way to act. This is how I get my needs met at home. So we have to pay attention to these things. Okay, so some of the coping skills for students could be a 5-finger breathing. So for kindergarteners, little kids, you could take a piece of paper, have them put their hand on the paper, and have them trace their fingers. I'm going to tell you right now, that's going to calm them down. That's going to calm them down right away. Because when you start giving them things to do that is not only like busy work, but now you got them focused. So they start tracing their fingers. Okay, we're going to trace our fingers, y'all. Make it something fun. They're going to want to do it when they get upset. Miss, can I have a piece of paper? I'm just, and after a while, they start to get comfortable with saying, can I have a piece of paper? Or I need a 5-finger breath. I need to do 5-finger breath breathing. And, they get easier. It gets easier with them, right? As they get older, you can do the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 grounding, which is, it's the 5 things that you see, 4 things you feel, 3 things you hear, 2 things you smell, and 1 thing you taste or appreciate. This is something for maybe your older kids, maybe in 2nd grade, 5th grade, and then you can use the next, you can do focus on 1 safe, helpful action instead of the entire day, right? So sometimes it could just be having them say, hey, can you do me a favor today and just be my assistant? I want you to be my assistant because I see right now you're a little frustrated. Could you be my assistant? Can you help me out? Right? Do something to kind of dysregulate, like to detach them from the emotion right away. Do something positive. And then once they're calmed down, then you can have a conversation with them. You can let them know how their behavior was not appropriate. But if you're trying to discipline them while also trying to gain control of the situation, you're going to lose them. You're going to yell, if you're yelling, if you're showing them that they're aggravating, you're going to lose them. So it's important to help them get back, like focus on something safe, do something nice with them, right? Or stop what you're doing and go and talk with them. Hey, come on, let's talk. Helpful actions instead of the entire day is also like, don't make them suffer the entire day for having a breakdown or not being able to regulate their system, right? And then it's talk about semester or whatever. Sometimes when young adults are in school, and they get a bad grade or they have a bad class, they usually allow that to kind of get to them for the entire semester. Now they're stressed out, they're burnt out, their behavior, they give up on the class because they had a bad grade or they didn't do well on something. Don't allow one bad thing to stop you from moving forward. Create a support list with 3 trusted people. So basically, this is also something that we can be doing during the transitional phase. Having our students write down people that protects them, like things that might help them sleep, things that they do to hydrate, food that they love, their favorite movement, exercise, and what do they do to take breaks. When you give these options to students in the beginning of the school year during that transitional phase, they pretty much write their own safety plan, right? They write the way that, what would help them if they get dysregulated and what they would need from you when they get dysregulated. We cannot have them do these things when they're in the midst of being dysregulated or because they keep going through things. And now you got all these services put on them. Now they feel like they don't care about me. They just don't want to deal with me. They just want somebody else to deal with my behavior. But if you do these things during the transitional phase, it allows the student not to automatically become burnt out, overwhelmed, or don't understand, which will minimize the behavior, the aggression, the lack of feeling like they can have somebody that they trust, right? And it also brings down some of that burnout on the teacher or on the school. So coping skills for the adults. Try the 3-minute reset. Feet on the floor, take some slow, deep breaths, name the feeling, identify what is within your control, and choose the next action. You can do this with your student if you're having a rough day. You can say, guys, we're going to do some breathing. They don't have to know what's going on with you. But if you need to do it, get your class to participate. They think it's fun, especially the younger kids, right? Use healthy boundaries. I can support you, but I cannot solve everything for you. When you're dealing with those situations, you can say things like that, right? I need a few minutes before I respond. Hey, I know you're upset right now, but give me a few minutes so I can I can process what you just said to me. Is that okay? Even if they're yelling at the top of their lungs, you have to learn also how to control yourself. Because if you control your emotions, guess what? The next time they have a blowout, they're not going to be able to get that reaction. And they probably won't even react that way because they're like, oh, she or he don't even react that way to me. But you also, like, again, that transitional phase, you're going to also know when that student is about to blow up. And so you'll automatically know what's about to happen. Or if you work with a colleague who you know is about to or who is having a bad day, if you pay attention during the transitional phase, you'll be able to like maybe stop it or control the way that you respond to it before it actually happens. Right? So it says for colleagues, create a care agreement. Check in without forcing people to disclose information. Ask whether someone wants to listen or problem solve or respect a break, and share responsibilities. Like as school workers and different things like that. I know that people have their job descriptions and their roles and different things like that. But if you know a colleague is having a rough day or a rough week, it might be, hey, I need you to do a buddy system this week to help out this teacher, just be support. anything to help kind of minimize the load and, make sure that these things are what we're doing. And if principals, if you're seeing your staff not doing that, ask why. See how you can help them. How like what can you do? But you have to have meetings. You have to have moments where you're talking to each other and really putting things out there. You might even want to have a box and say, put some questions in there. So when you guys do meet, there's things in there, suggestions, or something might have happened. And people can be very vague, and you can try to answer them and try to do some role play just to try to get people to understand that emotions and feelings do matter. Supporting students and colleagues is caring, but burnout is not proof of commitment. Sometimes you just have to ask someone else to step in, and that's when that care agreement comes in. You are not a robot. You also have feelings. Just because you're a teacher or administrator does not mean that you don't have a moment where you want to crash out. So always know that just because people have feelings, it does not mean that you have to commit to burning out due to them. Sometimes you just got to step away. Sometimes you just got to ask someone to help, but you cannot always do it yourself. And then I started thinking about what else could I help you guys with? What else can I give you? And I wanted to take a break real quick before we move to the next session or section. And I want to ask you guys, are you learning anything from this conversation right now? If you've been in since we started at 7, have you learned anything? Is there something that you want to ask me before we go into the next part of this discussion or this conversation? If not, then we will continue to move on. All right, so I chose 5 questions that I think that might be good for everyone to ask students, administrators, colleagues, anybody. It's just questions that you can ask instead of your regular, how was your day? What didn't you like? Blah, blah, blah. So you can say, what was the easiest part of your day and what was the hardest part of your day, right? Was there a moment today when you felt supported or alone? What took the most energy from you today? Did anything happen today that you are still carrying or that's still bothering you? And do you want me to listen, help you problem solve, or simply sit with you? These are questions that you can ask a student, you can ask a colleague, you can ask the administrator, you can ask anybody these questions. But it helps to have open-ended questions where people can go through a conversation with you and release some of the things. Because if you ask people closed-ended questions such as, how was your day? More than likely, they're going to say it was good or if it was rough. But people will not continue to move forward with the answering those questions. The more you ask questions that are intriguing to people and to get them to thinking, they're releasing the pressure, which releases the burnout. That is important. And that's why talk therapy is so amazing, because as people are talking about the things that they're going through, they think it's just the therapist helping them. But in reality, it's a lot of them just getting the information out, the things that have harmed them, the things that they're carrying. So the more you talk about things and you get it out, you can move forward to the next thing. You don't have to carry it, which causes you less burnout, right? So when you talk about compassion with accountability, it says use connect, clarity, correct, and continue. So we're going to say connect. I can see this is difficult. Clarity. Help me understand what happened. Correct. When we address the concern without threatening anyone, and then continue, let's identify what happens next and what support will help you follow through. So this is what you can put in your rooms and your offices to help people understand when we are showing compassion, but still making sure that people take accountability of what they're doing. Because the more you show compassion, but also hold people accountable, the better off you're going to feel, and the more supported others are going to feel as well. We want to also make sure that when we are showing up with compassion and accountability, that we avoid public humiliation. So we're not going to use sarcasm. We're not going to use empty threats. We're not going to repeat it. We're not going to tell someone to keep, to calm down, calm down. We're going to not force eye contact. There are times where students might be having a bad day, and you're like, look at me, look at me. Why are we doing that? That person is now feeling shame. That person might be really in pain, and you're trying to make them look at you. Don't do that. Not even just the student, but anytime you're dealing with someone and they're having a hard time, you don't have to force eye contact. Where is the respect? The respect is, let's respect their feelings so they can respect yours. You give people the compassion that they need so they don't feel humiliated or shameful. You right? Sometimes we assume the intent of somebody was to be deliberate, and it's not always true. We don't want to promise secrecy, right? We don't want to say, oh, tell me, I won't tell anybody, or your secret is safe with me. No. Sometimes that makes it worse. That makes someone feel uncomfortable, right? When someone does something, or if there is something going on, like I know a lot of times students will come to school and there might be some things going on in the school, and you have a teacher who has a really good relationship with the family, and they may not want to acknowledge or tell the principal what happened because we know DCF was going to get involved, or something bigger. But at the end of the day, our job is to make sure that our kids are safe. So if the kid actually comes in and tells you something, it's not for you to try to protect them right away. It's for you to make sure that they are protected. And that means following the protocol, right? Going to your principal, letting them know what happened, and then talking through it. And then going to the next steps, right? But we also have to make sure that we're not making people feel like they can't trust you either. So again, that's why you got to go to your principal and go through the steps. So preventing burnout for adults who support everyone else. I'm one of those people. I had to learn this, y'all. And it's gotten easier over the years, but it has been hard. Schedule a real recovery break, right? So stop treating every message as an emergency, every email, right? Every ask. Share responsibilities. Use supervision consultation. If you're going through something, if something is going on at the school, talk to your principal or your vice principal. Be able to use some time to have some supervision consultation. Find an experienced or a well-seasoned teacher, right? Someone who's been doing the job longer, and maybe they can give you some feedback. Call the employee assistant program, right? And then, like you said, get professional help when you need it, like calling me, 860-656-9333, right? I do accept a lot of insurances, guys. Create a transition ritual between work and home. So set after-hour boundaries. One of the things that I do is during work hours, I keep my phone on Do Not Disturb. And at 9 o'clock, it goes right back on to Do Not Disturb. If I'm doing a puzzle, it's on Do Not Disturb. If I'm doing a Lego set, it's on Do Not Disturb. Why? Because sometimes we have to take breaks and set boundaries, right? Protect one restoration activity. So what you want to do is make sure that if you know that every day after work you're going to run, that's what you need to do. So if someone says, hey, we're going to happy hour, that might not be for you to do it, because if you get off track, it might throw everything off track for you for that day. Sometime when you're in high stress spaces, you have to continue to do your structure, because if you don't, then you will start to feel shame. Now, as you work through it, you can start to try to implement things differently. but you got to stick to the same thing as you're transitioning. Ask for help before reaching a crisis point. You do not have to be available to everyone all the time. To be a good parent, educator, leader, or colleague, there are so many of us who feel like we have to be available to everybody because they're our parent, they're our child, they're our boss, they're our significant other. We don't have to be available all the time. When you are too available, you are burning yourself out before you even get to school, right? Before you even get home. So you have to learn how to say no, set healthy boundaries, and understand that sometimes people will get their feelings hurt because you can't help or you're not available. And it's okay. Now, I know we talked about community leaders, so I want to talk a little bit about how community leaders can help. Share trusted counseling and crisis resources. Create welcoming spaces. Partner with schools and mental health professionals. Offer workshops on trauma, emotional intelligence, communication, and boundaries. Make informational accessible. Support staff wellness as well as student outcomes. And create referral systems for concerns beyond a leader's role. Mental health support cannot be the responsibility of one counselor, one teacher, one parent, one organization. Healthy communication creates a system of love and care. One of the things that I would love to see, especially in the city of Hartford, because that's the city I'm from, is when there are big events and different things happening, instead of always putting everything in a like a flyer or social media, we might want to connect with our news people because they always put on shootings and negative things, but we need to get them to put on all the great stuff that's happening within our schools to get our parents out, to get our students excited about school, to just get the information. When there's health clinics, this needs to be broadcasted all over the news, not just social media, because people do watch the news. And so I think that's a big thing if we can connect with the news stations, really to get our information out and see all the great things. I know my sister works at Wish, my daughter works at Wish, and when I say the stuff that they've been putting together for their page and stuff, I just think like stuff like that needs to go on the news, because they need to see just the fun and just the intentionality of making sure that the kids are having fun, the students are doing what they need to do, the parents are helpful, the staff is helpful, and they're having fun in school. So I think like one of the things that community leaders can do is really try to connect the schools with the news channels so that they can come in and see what these schools are doing on a daily basis or the monthly basis or whatever it is. Like send people to get healthy information out, and it will bring up the culture. It'll bring up the feeling of schools and what's inside and what's actually happening, and they can see what's needed to be support, like what supports need on a heavier level, right? I think anyway, that would be great, because in so many of the schools that we have now, we have a lot of children with special needs and there's not a lot of money. And I feel like the more we see the things that's needed on the news, then I think that people want to help and understand some of the crisis that's happening in certain school systems. So I want to remind you that the work we are discussing tonight is to connect to also my curriculum. I have been developing a curriculum around trauma, emotional intelligence, communication, boundaries, and healing. So I created this through my dissertation that when I was in school, my dissertation really talked about complex trauma, and it's from ages K to 12. And I am really, really big with making sure that the research matches the information or the behavior. And so I did a lot of research. I wrote a lot of papers. I had a lot of stress, but it was for the best. So finally, I have my curriculum that I've created from my dissertation. And, I'm really big with all the things that I've been talking to you guys about on how to help with burnout, how to, support each other, how to support our students, how to support the districts. Like, we need to do better, guys. So if you are a school, daycare, organization, church, or community group, and you're looking for a trauma-informed educational and emotional intelligent program, you can call me. I am a passionate faith woman, and I am God fearing. And I also understand that my community is in need of some changes, and I'm all about that. But not only am I faith based, I'm also just a woman who went to school for a long time to learn about the way that the brain works, how trauma impacts the brain, and also how different systems may not be built for people of color. So I am really big with just helping to educate. I work with people from all races, all socioeconomics, but what I really love is being able to help people love each other in a way that's organic and not forced. So my trainings, my speaking engagements is all about that, and I'm excited to be able to bring that to a table that needs it. And so not only does schools need it, but churches need it, organizations need it, daycare systems, they need it. Different organizations need it, period. And so sometimes we get into a place where we're only talking about schools and students, but those students grow up and graduate and they go into workforces, and those same behaviors are still there. People get married and the same behaviors, they get into these positions, same behaviors. So it's not just for the schools, it's not just for the students, it's for everyone. And I feel like if we can continue to help people learn how to regulate their emotions and understand that they have to not only understand their emotions, but be able to regulate their emotions when other people are unable to. That's so important, right? I want to give you guys some titles of some books that you guys can grab as administrators, as teachers, and it's the Whole Brain Child by Daniel Siegel, No Drama Discipline by Daniel Siegel, Permission to Feel by Mark Brackett, Fostering Resilient Learners by Kristen Sawyer and Pete Hall, The Boy Who Was Raised as a Dog by Bruce Perry. And then you can call, like, if you have issues with like suicide or anything like that, 988 suicide or the crisis line. You can text 988 in the United States, and you can get help for suicide prevention or help with that. The SAMHSA National Helpline is 1-800-662-HELP, which is 4357. These are just some things that you guys can, like, some resources that you can have if there's something that you're just struggling with and you can't get over it. So again, this podcast is educational, is for encouragement, it's just general information. It is not psychotherapy. I am not trying to diagnose y'all. I am not telling you like, okay, since you watch me for an hour, you good, right? So I just want to let you know, like, if you might be going through something, if you feel like you need additional help, please call a provider, get you some help. Again, if you don't want to use me, I have resources. I can lead you to the right place. You can call me at 860-656-9333. You can even reach me on Facebook at under Tasha Rose. I am on Instagram under Let's Talk About It Counseling. I'm on TikTok under Let's Talk About It Counseling. I'm on LinkedIn under Dr. Tasha Rose. So, there's ways that you can get the resources and the help that you need so that you're not, falling into this rut during this school year. And then as we begin the school year, let's remember that everyone is adjusting, y'all, not just the students. So let's give people room to learn, repair, and communicate and grow. And let's stop assuming that every difficult behavior means a difficult person. Sometimes it means an overwhelmed person who needs support, structure, and accountability. So this year, let's choose curiosity before judgment, connection before correction, and when possible, the safety and the safety of others. We want to make sure that you're listening and that you're understanding before you're reacting. Okay. So I'm your girl, Dr. Tasha Rose, your transparent sister at Women's Healing. And I want you to know that I love you and God loves you too. Peace.